Hey everybody, I'm Nico.
And that makes me Kevo.
And that makes this MCU.html / the Black Widow. She's finally here. It's finally happening. Oh my god, after so much time, we get to watch it. We get to watch it from home. How amazing is that Black Widow movie?
It really has only been delayed like about 14 months, which is a while, but it's not as long as it feels because we haven't gotten a major MCU movie since 2019.
But I do feel like I remember rumblings about Black Widow since like the second phase. I feel like I've been waiting forever for this movie, and it's finally here.
Plus, this is the first time we're going to be able to watch an MCU film from the comfort of our home. Today's episode of HTML is somewhat unique and requires a different kind of introduction.
I'm glad we're doing it with a unique format.
Yeah.
There's no other way to talk about the Black Widow than the one-of-a-kind lady she is. Although, evidently, there's a bunch more of her now.
Well, yeah, she got friends. Where there's one spider, there is often many. So, who knows? We don't know. We have no idea yet. We genuinely have not even started the film. And so what we're going to do is we are going to come back sporadically here throughout our experience of watching the movie and react live. We might say a lot of dumb things up front that we end up regretting. We'll see how that works out.
But we're going to give you the sort of Mister's minutes of the Black Widow, as it were. Which, you know what, the Black Widow coming right in the middle of Loki is so funny to me because it's sort of like, you know, and I don't mean this dismissively or anything, but like Loki is not Thor. And Black Widow is so frequently not Nick Fury or not Captain America.
I was going to say not Cap, because when we were talking about her major appearances, she's mostly appeared in the Captain America franchise. So yeah, okay.
I think that's going to be a really interesting way to view this all together.
Plus, they're both so tricksy.
So tricksy.
So tricksy.
And so we're here to find out if we're going to get bitten by that widow's bite that she bites so well.
Sure.
All right, you ready to do this? Let's go get some premiere access.
Yeah. Okay, so we've gotten through the opening sequence.
Yes, I liked Ohio 1995. I liked the taut plane chase. I was a little like, oh, hi 1995 suburbia. Okay, you know, and I understand it was setting stuff up, but I was also a little bit like, you had even said, I bet you fall first. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like that line at the very beginning was very ham-handed in like, Natasha's going to fall first when she dies in Endgame. Ha 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 ha.
Because she falls, right?
Okay.
But at the same time, for as effective as I found the use of Ohio in 1995, we just had a conversation about how I was less impressed with Seattle in 1991's contributions to this film. This cover of Smells Like Teen Spirit, very reminiscent of the Tori Amos cover in some really cool ways. Just to get a little gender theory a little bit. Okay, so Smells Like Teen Spirit is like the personified embodiment of male angst from the 90s. We're seeing a movie about the first female superhero the Marvel Cinematic Universe got. Now, we have ultimately received more, but Black Widow came first.
Yeah, she was in the third movie of the MCU. Yeah.
If it was like a dynamic feminist statement, I'm with it, but it kind of smacks of the CW and Teen Wolf, and it just kind of feels like a device I've seen used on a million TV shows. The dramatic, creepy cover of something.
Like, I already knew that cover of Smells Like Teen Spirit because of probably seeing it somewhere else on something like Roswell, New Mexico. It's just that it needs to be acknowledged that this is a major motion picture and it really shouldn't be using the same devices as teen dramas.
And the other thing it made me think of was 50 Shades using Crazy in Love. So if we're saying that this is 50 Shades of Black Widow, like, I'm not trying to harp on the device, but it was such a prolonged use of such an iconic song that it automatically gained grandeur.
And maybe even if it was a different dramatic cover, like if it was one of the Painted Black covers as a commentary on the Red Room and the Black Widow.
Something.
But like Smells Like Teen Spirit was like, oh, haha, okay, yeah.
Because she's like 12 there, and Yelena's like 6, and their parents are adults. So there wasn't even like a teen that was angsting.
Yeah.
In the scene.
I also want to say right up front that I'm really annoyed already with the home version closed captioning. Several lines have already been wrong.
I mean, can we just please do something like that makes the hard of hearing community feel like they are a part of this?
Yes, it can't be that difficult to get closed captioning correct. And it really always upsets me whenever I see mistakes in subtitles and closed captioning, but especially a major motion picture, same day, that you've had ages to get right. There should not be, like, at one point she says, I want to go back, and the closed captioning said, I don't want to go back. That's not what she said.
And for me, it has to do with the fact that we just sort of waxed philosophic for 5 minutes about this cover of Smells Like Teen Spirit being put into the film. So sound has such a huge impact on these films. You know, we give Oscars for sound design and sound editing and mixing, and we're already kind of discrediting some of the artistry of the film.
Yeah.
For the hard of hearing and deafy community, so that we're not putting more work into subtitles in general. I understand that there is a lot to be said for accessibility concerns. I would never want to violate the rules of accessibility, but I feel like there's a very flatness to closed captions that I need a little bit more, but that's kind of neither here nor there. Where I'm at right now in the film, I understand that that was 1995, and we're probably going to get some filled in from before that. I know we're going to go to post-Civil War, which I just want to say I'm so disappointed because I'd really wanted this film to take place during the snap.
Yeah, when you said that to me, I was like, shit, that's a really great idea. That is a really smart place to put it. There is still so much that we need to fill in from inside the blip. We only just saw Scarlett Johansson's face, so we don't know why it takes place post-Civil War, pre-Infinity War.
There could be a great reason.
Yeah, but as a rule, I think your idea probably would have been much better, much more useful, and served as a better entry into Phase 4, rather than rehashing something from like 3/4 of the way through the Infinity Saga.
All right, you ready to go back for more Red Room?
Yeah.
Red Room, Red Room! So much happened okay, so
Well, so much happened in the last like 5 to 10 minutes of what we watched. It was a really long stretch of nothing for a while there, which I get. You know, people love atmosphere and people love long sweeping shots, especially when they can be enhanced by CG.
I did find myself a little in love with Rick Mason. The actor was super handsome, super shiny about everything, very, oh, you don't come to me when you got friends. You know, I'm not going to insult him with the British accent.
We know him from an episode of Happy Endings and an episode of Doctor Who. He was Other Dave in the library episode of Doctor Who.
I really enjoyed that. One of the things that this movie has to do that is a lot is set up a number of characters very quickly. So we had to get adult Yelena right away. And so she's kind of like a more jaded Natasha. And one of the things I think is really interesting is as soon as she was turned, as soon as she got the pfft, and she was like, oh no, my eyes are crazy and now I'm not evil, right? I was super happy because I felt like even though a lot wasn't said in that moment, I read the choreography really well. I thought that was directed pretty cleanly. One of the things that maybe I thought was a little bit off at first, but then I came to understand was, so the Nat versus Taskmaster fight is like, seriously, I mean, Marvel's Avengers took it straight from this film because I have done that fight myself. Natasha versus Taskmaster on a bridge with things on fire around them. This exact fight, like, it's crazy. I was really excited to see that, and I was like, but I kind of feel like both of them know better than to fight so close quarters when the two of them are geniuses that can turn anything around them into a projectile long-range weapon. Once we understood that he wasn't here to fight Natasha, I was like, okay, that makes more sense.
I'm very curious to find out who's going to be under that mask, because I feel like us not knowing is a very specific choice. And I think we have read who plays the stunt double. It was announced that some Russian fighter guy is Taskmaster, and I think that's because he is the person that was just... But I imagine that there is someone else under that mask. It kind of feels like they're
might be a
toward...
wise choice.
Okay, that is a guess. I was annoyed at first when they brought up Budapest, because I am a person who's like, okay, it has been almost 10 years.
Pick anything else in
since
canon.
Avengers. You just brought it up again in Endgame, and then we met Yelena in Budapest, and we got some more details on what that really ultimately meant and how that was a part of Natasha's journey toward being a S.H.I.E.L.D. agent. I really think it was an excellent case of giving us just enough details about it without making it too much of a focus. I know a lot of people say show not tell, but sometimes tell not show is better, because it could have been a 5-minute sequence that would have taken up way too much time in this movie that is already so exceptionally long. And watch now, we're going to get a 10-minute flashback to it.
I'm sure.
No, I'm just kidding, probably not.
I'm excited to see where it goes from here. We had that great action sequence where the two of them escaped, and I really enjoyed the trade-off. I mean, I just kept being like, Natasha, your back should be broken by now. I'm not trying to be an ass, but like...
Oh my god, when she fell and she hit all those things on the way down,
and,
like
but then
Homer
she landed
Simpson.
on her fucking feet like a cat. It was...
But you're not a cat, you're a widow.
I mean, do spiders land on their feet?
I don't even want to know.
I don't want to know. But I am excited to see where this is going. I'm excited to get me some Red Guardian. You know, a lot of my favorite sort of like Russian super characters can't be in this, and that's okay. So I want to see who we do get. Nobody's Dark Star, but I am excited to see how these characters play out. And you ready to go do more?
Let's go.
All right.
So I think after we hit play, we decided that we maybe hit pause and did that last segment a couple of minutes too early. We didn't know there was going to be more to the escape with the car sequence and Taskmaster coming back again. But we also got more Yelena, a lot more characterization on her, and that scene immediately after. And like, I am loving her more than I could have possibly hoped.
I went into this really nervous because I'm a big Tasha guy from the comics. Movie Nat is really good, but she's not quite the same woman that I love from the comics. And I do understand that part of what I love from the comics is that she did kind of date everyone for a while. Tony Stark, Daredevil, Hercules. You know, she's been with everybody. She's been kind of like romantic at just about any hot dude that I've ever, you know, wanted to cosplay as. So I wonder if a lot of that is, as a gay man, I recognize her ability, her power. I see her, you know, a little bit more as their equal. So it's always been kind of like a weird at odds, my relationship with Tasha versus Nat. I just want the best, most progressive, inclusive, feminist iteration of the character we can have. And I understand that feminism is such a big, broad term, which is why I love that even though Nat is, you know, like an agent and she's gonna chop you to death, she's still also a woman with woman concerns and woman needs, and that is a really important thing to consider. And then you have Yelena, who is explicitly not as worried about self-preservation. She doesn't have, you know, mom instincts. Yelena represents a very different kind of cool feminism that is awesome to be, and I love this sort of dyad in the Widow Force that this is representing.
And I'm also really interested to elaborate on that in the way that Yelena doesn't seem to care about collateral damage the same way that Nat does. Nat was like, we can't just steal someone's car, versus how much Yelena seems to judge Nat for what she did to Dracov's daughter.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that I loved the most about all of the ways everything leading up to the Red Guardian stuff played out was that we got a sense that Widow truly learned from her time in the Avengers. Something that I really love about Widow is that she's very, everybody's got a ledger, and she's willing to let shit go because she needs shit let go. Think about who she is in Civil War. She is part of a fight against her friends, but then she just wants everything to be okay when it's time to be okay again. I think the magnanimity that defines Natasha Romanoff is a central part of the Avengers narrative. Mm-hmm. In a way that Yelena is not designed to replace. Yelena is kind of her own new wild card. I think perhaps the new faces of forgiveness in the Marvel Universe are Thor, post-growth, Peter, with everything that he learned from Tony. Of course, now we do have to talk about the Red Guardian, who is charming, delightful, adorable, sweet. The little nod to Ursa Major made me scream at the top of my lungs. I'm like, prepare! And like, I was so happy. I love the Russian characters in Marvel so much. That whole Red Guard segment of characters are so well defined and developed, and I love them so much. So I'm really glad that we got to see someone like Ursa Major get like a little nod, and I love that we got to see some other characters shine in a segment that was very clearly David Harbour like inhaling the film.
And yet at the same time, I don't feel like he dominated. I really feel like both Yelena and Natasha still had plenty of presence in that sequence. They really have been keeping up the comedy in a fun way that's not making it overly comedic.
Yeah.
The action sequences have all been very engaging and interesting. I didn't see the avalanche coming. That was a really clever touch. I thought this was going to be a lot more along the lines of like the Captain America movies, which I've said aren't really my favorite, but with how fun and exciting they're keeping the characters, it's really keeping me engaged in the film so far. And we're a little over an hour in. We have
just about the same amount of time left.
So we'll see if that sustains.
I'm enjoying Jason Bourne in The Fast and the Furious, which is what this is really playing out like. It's really exciting. It's really dynamic. It's very fast paced. You have to work to keep up with it, which I really like. All in all, this might be the best cast Marvel movie in a really long time. I think Florence Pugh is bringing a level of dynamic certainty to the role that I really love. I think, like we just said, you know, Alexei is just too much in every scene in the best possible way. And I feel like Scarlett Johansson is really digging into what made this character a success in the first place. A sort of sense of, I've got red in my ledger, but also ready to make fun of herself. And with that, you ready to go back and watch some more?
Let's do it.
Pose! We're such posers.
Yeah, total posers.
Total posers. We're trying to do good with our poses, though.
So he paused at the helicopter falling out of the sky, and then the girls were like, "You were a terrible father," and he was like, "What?" And then we met the pigs.
Okay. I do actually want to jump back a second. When Yelena was like, they just go in and they just whip it all out. They just chop. I was just like, that's such a Nicoism.
Yes.
I love her. She says everything I'm thinking. It's really refreshing and it makes me feel really seen.
Well, and to build on that too, something else I said to you as we continued watching this next portion of the film was one of the things that I love the most about Yelena and her performance is how much little sister energy
Such a little sister.
she's channeling. That's definitely something you can relate to. And it's something that she wouldn't be able to do as easily if she couldn't build on and build off of Scarlett Johansson's Natasha, but she's stealing the show in the best way.
And then we hit what I just like. I understand that it was the cute moment, right? I make this comment a lot that in fiction, we're frequently told that people are this amazing unit. And I feel like what happens is they're not for very long. We get that 5 minutes where everything is really good. And I think we were trying to get that 5 minutes in here where it's like, oh, look, everything could be perfect if they could just make it work. Thankfully, it was short. The pissing on my hands story was very Frasier. And it's like, if there was a Russian Frasier, that would be a scene between Marty and Russian Frasier. Duh.
Something that I was really surprised about this scene, because this goes back to like years old trailers now where we see the four of them sitting around that table and he's like, family. I had been under the impression that David Harbour's character was the father figure to all three of those women. And then I finally looked up Rachel Weisz's age and holy crap, she looks amazing.
Good job.
51.
She's older than David Harbour.
Which is so unusual for these films. It shouldn't be, but even just 5 years older than him, I was like, oh, and wow. I hadn't gotten from the trailers that it was father, mother, and two girls. So that's another huge thing that is affecting my perception of the film.
And now they're trying to make him look like shit, which is definitely part of it. I think going back in for this final 45 minutes, this third act, I'm looking for precious few things. My theory that perhaps Melina is Taskmaster was already debunked.
Not fully, but mostly.
I mean, they stood in the same scene, so I don't think...
They?
Yeah, they faced
it's all
each
happening
other.
So fast.
And she was like, we got to get them back to him before it's too late.
Oh, right. Oh my God, we just watched it.
So... So maybe it's Dostoevsky's dead daughter that's in the Taskmaster suit.
Yes, and her face is all messed up.
All kinds of Dr. Doomsy. And I'm just looking for some closure. I find that I'm loving Yelena so much. She's my new it. I am so about this character. She's really providing something I'm looking forward to in Hawkeye. Her and Kate Bishop being BFF would be really great. Let's get back to it.
Yeah, let's find out.
Okay, so... it got stabby and explodey, which, is fine.
Very widow.
I really liked how the movie dramatically became about how family is family through it all, which is kind of the Fast and Furious of it, right?
I felt that too.
Yeah, it's family is family, with just a little bit more in the family. Very Sistra. I really love how they accept that Red Guardian is a little dumb. And so he really can't be in on the plan because it could be a problem. So as long as he doesn't have something to do that he could mess up, it's better.
It's very Drax.
I like that we have Melina being brilliant and clever and intense and powerful and really a dynamic character. I like whenever we can show somebody is on equal footing with a superhero a la Tony Stark, because they can build things, they're a scientist, they know what they're doing. And so many of the sort of one-liner, there is now a problem, I've blown up the engine.
We are in a controlled crash.
There are so many beautiful elements of that really made it work for me. And not to be like, but I immediately called. As soon as he said pheromones and he punched her in the face, I was like, oh, she's trying to get her nose broke. Do it.
And then the implication that he was too weak to finish the job for her was a really nice touch in the writing.
He couldn't do with his fists what she could do with just her face, right? Just like when they were bringing Alexei out of the prison, not only did they bring him out of the prison, but they brought him out of the cold. Not only did the man who run the Red Room, the cold room, this, Russian place. Not only did he die, but he died by crashing his dream into fire.
Into flames.
So his dream went down in flames, and then he did separately sort of that parallel aggressive pushback against the idea of the cold. You had made a call really early on that Taskmaster would be able to fight as all of the Avengers, which is essentially what Taskmaster does, but since you didn't have that background, you maybe weren't as familiar with it. So I like that the filmmakers took the time to be like, he fights like all of them.
But it was weird then when she did this thing, because like technically, especially at that point, Black Panther is not a member of the Avengers. You definitely called it that the Taskmaster turned out to be Dreykov's daughter.
Not looking nearly as fucking Phantom of the Opera as I would have expected.
Yeah, and maybe it's forgetting that this is still Marvel Studios, this is still the MCU, and it's just been so long since we've had new movies that I'm thinking in terms of like other films that would go that hard, the same way that when Alexi was singing American Pie, I said to you 3 times in a row, he's gonna get shot in the head.
Oh yeah, with the window framing.
If it was a different movie, he would have been shot in the head, but because this is still the MCU, it's still PG-13, it was just the lights going on.
And the only real complaint I had, because we're 2 hours and 3 minutes,
we're basically done.
But there was no good break in the action. I had 3 complaints about that action sequence. Number one, you had said something that I hadn't really thought about, but you know what, you're really right. I do not love aerodynamic fight flying punch.
Especially if you don't have magic. It's one thing if you're magic people, but you're not. And so like a fight chase through the air as you're falling from a giant helicarrier that...
Right? I just did all of the Avengers that I could think of that could fly. Oh, and Carol.
It could have been worse. I've seen so many that are so much worse, but yeah.
And you'd think I'd think of Carol first. So here's the thing. I don't love the flying fight punchies.
Right.
They're a little too much for me. The other thing that I didn't love so much was I hadn't thought about it until I was like sitting there trying to go over it. They kind of made Taskmaster Ghost.
Okay, totally.
Bad dad who programmed them against the good guys who weren't as bad as they seemed, in a way that ultimately the disgraced good guy who felt disgraced in comparison to another one of the Avengers. Originally, it was Hank Pym Iron Man, but here instead, it's Red Guardian to Captain America. And then, there's this whole, can we turn them? They have a medical problem as a result of the machinations that caused this whole thing. So, like, there are way too many Ghost Taskmaster parallels for me.
I thought you were going to point to the fact that they abandoned Taskmaster in that cell, and it's only by coincidence that Natasha ran into her, and we were just gonna have to be okay with that.
And here's the thing. I feel like one of the things I noticed about this movie is that even with like most of the bad guys in Hydra, even though they're all very, kill us once, we will grow back 7 times.
So many more heads.
So many heads, right? Like, so
crazy.
I don't know why these are the gayest Nazis, but I'm so into it.
It's how we get through the day.
It's how we get through the day. I really love that the Red Room agents, the kind of Red Guard that we have been dealing with here, sort of whatever version of the Red Guard we're getting, because this isn't the real Red Guard, but whatever version of it we're getting, I like that they have no self-preservational instincts, and they love blowing shit up on the way. They don't care. If somebody's shooting at their plane, they will crash their plane to not lose to this shooter. And that means they're more okay with collateral damage. Natasha is not. Natasha became an Avenger a long time ago, and so she has a little bit more deprogramming. Yelena only stopped being an agent yesterday. Melina defected on screen. And, at the same time, Alexi had been in jail. So when did these... Yeah,
speaking out, but then still he ended up in jail, so good it did him.
So where did these characters have an opportunity to learn kindness, to learn care? At this point, Taskmaster to them is the enemy. Maybe Melina knows who she is, all said and done, she should, but to Yelena and to Alexi, Taskmaster is a monster. So my number 3 is actually that I also don't like that Taskmaster functioned essentially as the destroyer. Like, I mean, down to the opening of the mask is the big reveal moment.
Here's what I will say positively about Taskmaster and Antonia is it's very important that the rest of the widows came and collected her.
And loved on her.
And
Yep.
Melina said, "We're taking her with us." So, for all the lack of characterization that Antonia got, she wasn't abandoned, and that had been my concern when
Yeah.
they were just locking her in the cell. I was like, we are not cool with that. But then it got to a place where I'm like, okay, even if we never see that character again, we know that she is getting help, and that's important.
And Yelena giving Natasha her pouches, just a little bit more love.
The Liefeld pockets.
Oh, so lovely.
Yeah.
I'm ready to hit play on the rest of the film. I'm excited. I enjoyed the family factor. I enjoyed how it brought the movie to sort of another level, and I'm ready to see how it ends.
I just remembered something we have coming, and who knows what else. I'm excited.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Some
but
people.
We'll talk about it. We'll talk about it. Yeah.
Okay, so I really liked the ending. I maybe think that we could have cut like 10 minutes earlier and then picked it back up a little bit more together, like after the Taskmaster fight. But all in all, I really enjoyed it, and I had no problems with where we cut it.
I feel like where we cut the first time should have been where it ended. We did not need to see Rick Mason again. It was nice to see her in the vest and with the hair, so we established, like, yeah, she's on the road to being the Natasha we see in Infinity War. But at the same time, we didn't need it, and the line from Rick Mason, that's what every guy wants to hear, is so flipping obnoxious, and that's exactly what I'm always talking about with explicitly visible heterosexuality in places where it's needless. Like, oh, man.
And now I actually want to ask you a question. We've been saying that we're a little bit frustrated that there was only the one post-credit scene. Do you think that that would have been a mid-credit scene? Because the movie is clearly over with that sunset, sunrise, sort of like that spin shot where she's standing in front of the big backdrop, and that's the very bum, 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 and like we just didn't get it there.
It wouldn't have been super fulfilling as a mid-credit scene, but not all of them are, and frankly, I am now disappointed because of how spoiled we've been when there is only one credit scene.
It feels weird.
It does feel weird.
It feels cheap. Yeah, not on purpose, but it feels cheap.
Before we went into this end credit scene, I was sort of already like, I'm not going to enjoy this because we can only have so much time with Contessa, who we realized who that cameo was going to be, because we've known ever since she made her appearance in Falcon and the Winter Soldier.
Yeah.
They spoke very openly about the fact that she was supposed to debut in Black Widow. We hadn't seen her yet. Obviously, she had to be in the end credit scene. And ultimately, I really enjoyed the credit scene more than I thought that I would. And I think it sits better where it is now than I feel it would have sat previously. Because we just would have been like, not you, but people like me, would have been like, who is this woman? What's going on?
What is this fantastic purple streak?
And then when we actually are introduced to her, I feel the way that we would have been introduced to her following Black Widow kind of would have been a letdown.
Yeah.
I don't think it would have answered our questions of what she was doing in Black Widow any better, whereas this raises more mystery of what is her involvement with Yelena.
And, you know, I liked seeing Yelena. She showed up looking a little Cher Horowitz. But
oh my God, that jacket, yeah.
I loved it. And, you know, I had said if Yelena is in an angry place because Natasha's dead, even though Natasha died a hero's death, she died a hero's death so that Hawkeye could get a show. I had not been anti-Yelena in the movies for any reason other than I'm not a big fan of the comic version. And the comic version wasn't created so that Scarlett Johansson could retire. The comic version was created so that they could do something new with the character, and then she was very quickly involved with the classic Black Widow. It made a lot of sense. But one of the things that we need to consider about this is that no matter what, Scarlett Johansson wants to be done. And maybe they can get her back, you know, but she wants to be done. And so my concern had been there would be like a really hard switch trying to get over to this new character. But I think the thing that they did so well was by telling us in advance that Yelena is going to tie into the Hawkeye show.
Mm-hmm.
Jeremy Renner might have an Oscar where Scarlett Johansson does not. But I believe we can agree that Scarlett Johansson commands the larger paycheck. And for that reason, I understand why they couldn't have retooled and done a Black Widow show about Scarlett Johansson's Natasha the way they can afford to do a Hawkeye show about Jeremy Renner's Clint Barton. So at the end of the day, Hawkeye is the show that we're getting as a consolation for Widow dying, because it's going to give us more Yelena, it's going to give us Kate, and if I get my way, it's going to give me Madame Mask, and Whitney and I have spent far too much time apart. I want her freaky gold face all up in my biz.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
So she banged
No,
Iron
okay.
Man, and
It's
then
okay. We'll find out or we won't.
she has a cool mask.
I believe you. With a name like that, you kind of have to.
Right? Anyway, so I want to reiterate, I loved this movie for what it is. Do I think it's like the greatest movie ever? No. But like, as far as superhero post end of era prequels set in a midpoint of a previous era, I think this really did a good job.
We're getting 4 MCU films in 2021, and I had been nervous about half of them, frankly. This was one that was so much more surprisingly engaging and entertaining, and left so many doors open as well for future stories. The fact that Alexi and Melina are still out there.
With Yelena.
Yeah, and we know that there is still all those other widows out there. There's so much story potential that is opened through this film, and it was a great focus on Scarlett Johansson. Wonderful goodbye to the character while also passing off her legacy to Yelena and all the rest as well. I'm still very nervous about the Eternals. Sorry, Eternals.
I'm nervous about Eternals. I'm nervous about Shang-Chi. I'm an inherently nervous guy about those things, and I'm really nervous about Spider-Man No Way Out of the Multiverse this time.
I mean, it's at the very least funny that the next movie that did come after Endgame was Far From Home, and then it was supposed to be Black Widow and leading into Phase 4 and eventually Spider-Man 3, and now it's coming out so close after Black Widow. It is like the 4th movie after Phase 3 ended. Like, oh, crazy days. Everything that's happened is so crazy, and now we're finally getting back into it.
And I kind of think this also goes in line with something Kevin Feige said, and who knows if, the great Feige guy is just yanking our chains.
He doesn't know us full transparency.
And so this could be a very another Dead is Dead. But I think one of the things I love that he said is we are done with the era of the multiple contract. There is no more. You are signed in for 9 years. And I have to wonder if that's because it reflects poorly on stock prices when an actor wants to leave mid-contract production.
And they're forced to stay, and that definitely reflects poorly back on the studio.
And it looks bad in the tabloids, and it looks bad, when you see it as a headline on Google News, and when you're trying to make art and there's all of this bullshit. Like, I mean, if I believed the internet, and if the internet were right every time, I am pretty sure that Brie Larson is now homeless and will never work again because everyone hates her. And we just know that's not true. But when you hear, well, Brie Larson got signed into a 12-year contract, somebody out there is going to say, I fucking hate Marvel. I bet Brie Larson's a bitch and she's going to be fired, right? And like, it morphs into something so dark and so dramatic. And I wonder if the age of the long contract is over so that, number one, they can focus on the stories they're telling at the time. And number two, I don't mean this with disrespect, but, it is kind of looking like Doctor Strange, the other cocky super genius, is about to sub in for Tony Stark for young Spidey. And that makes me feel as though there is a point where Kevin Feige can say, look, not that you're not amazing, but you understand there are other cocky science bastards. Right? You understand that we can take you out of this production and swap in another story. Look how Guardians of the Galaxy 3 was, fabled back at Guardians 2, and James Gunn's been working on it since then, and now we're getting a Christmas special before then. So even things that are certain can change, let alone the things that aren't even in stone yet. So I really feel like we might be entering an age of, we could get David Harbour, we could get Rachel Weisz. Let's get them while we can get them. We have a plan for Yelena. Time to say goodbye to Natasha. And, I really feel like they're moving toward a healthier universe.
And part of the problem with keeping people on contracts, too, is then you're obligated. If they had Rachel Weisz and David Harbour signed for 3 movies, you got to pull them in for 2 more movies or you got to pay them out. And that doesn't necessarily foster a very creative atmosphere for creating these stories.
And how many times did an actor say, oh, I got offered that, but I couldn't take it because I would have to have given up 4 other films? films. How many incredible iterations of characters have we missed out on? I'm obviously not going after anybody in particular, but perhaps there was a movie that was slated where they had an actor, and when that fell apart, they said, okay, well, the movie's going to go on the chopping block. Maybe that's why we haven't seen Adam Warlock yet.
Emily Blunt was going to be Black Widow, but it didn't work out with her schedule. Everything about the franchise would be so different if it was not Scarlett Johansson.
I agree, especially because her chemistry with the other actors is a good portion of what, when you have such a powerful actress and she is a sex symbol, but is also a very powerfully, emotionally eloquent performer, and she's thrust into all of these testosterone-driven men. Even Chris Evans as Captain America was a hulked-out roid of a man. And so even if the man was gentle, his case was enormous and masculine, and Tony Stark drips masculinity and cum. And, the rest of them are all in the same boat of this very masculine juxtaposition of self, having a character like Widow, who we expect to become perhaps not emotional, but more in touch with her emotions at different points because of our expectations of women in fiction. It allowed us to have an in touch with his feelings Thor. It allowed us to have an in touch with his feelings Hulk. I think we owe, not just Natasha Romanoff, a character who has defined the Marvel Universe since the 70s, but I think we owe an enormous debt of gratitude to Scarlett Johansson for the way she allowed this boys club to finally fucking change. No disrespect to Famke Jensen, Halle Berry, or Anna Paquin, but they're not defined by those roles. Halle Berry is an Oscar winner and a breathtaking performer. Anna Paquin is an Oscar winner and a breathtaking performer. It's so weird to me that the person in that movie that doesn't have an Oscar is Sir Patrick Stewart. How? I can't with the Marvel Cinematic versus X-Men stuff. But what I can do is I can say, I loved this movie. I'm more grateful to Scarlett Johansson for Black Widow, and I am more grateful that she came back and gave us one more movie.
Yeah.
And it was a really, it was a goodbye love song I didn't know I needed. So I had a really good time, and I can't wait to do full coverage in an HTML episode over on our podcast, because I think that's where we're at. I think this movie is ready for that deep dive. Did you have any other, this is my reaction kind of reactions?
The only other thing that I might have liked to see was a little bit more focus on Yelena, especially in the outro, as we know that now she is essentially going to be taking over the title of Black Widow in the MCU. I would have liked it to be a little bit more of a shared movie than it was, but at the same time, she was given so much to work with. She was given so much screen time and characterization all in one movie to introduce her character, and I really appreciate that. And I'm looking forward to seeing more of her this year.
Same.
All right.
Well, I would say let's go back and hit play, but I think it's time to have lunch.
Yeah, now we're just waiting for the Loki finale, and then, gosh, we don't have anything MCU again for a while. Why are they doing this to us?
Well, what if, until then, we take a look at some of the stuff that we've missed over on our podcast, HTML, and maybe even take a look at some WandaVision?
Maybe. We'll see.
But what if? Hey guys, if you like that cut, do be sure to like some of our other materials. So don't forget to like, subscribe, and check out these other amazing videos here at X's for Podcast.